Summer, 1943. Camp Crossville, Tennessee. German soldier stared at the brown liquid fizzing inside the glass bottle. Unable to look away for 2 years in North Africa, he had survived on hard biscuits, tinned rations, and bitter ersatz coffee. Sugar was rare. Fresh food was a memory. Comfort was a fantasy. No. In an American prison camp, a guard handed him something called Coca-Cola. It cost 5 cents. The guard casually mentioned that American children paid the exact same price from their allowance. 5 cents. Soldier lifted the bottle slowly, half expecting a trick. The sweetness hit first, then the carbonation, cold, sharp. A liver didn't taste like a drink, it tasted like impossibility. That summer, more than 370,000 German prisoners of war, scattered across camps in the United States, experienced the same shock. They had been raised on Nazi propaganda that portrayed America as weak, decadent, and collapsing under its own excess. Instead, they found ice cream served as a routine, dessert soft drinks as everyday beverages, candy bars so common that guards sometimes gave them away. These were not luxuries reserved for the elite, they were ordinary, and that ordinariness was devastating. But back in Germany, deprivation had been sold as virtue. Ration cards were patriotic. Hunger was framed as sacrifice. Scarcity proved strength. But in America, abundance was effortless, even extended to captured enemies. What began as astonishment over sugar and carbonation would grow into something far more dangerous. Doubt. Turning point had come just months earlier in May 1943. The surrender of Axis forces in Tunisia brought roughly 250,000 German and Italian soldiers into Allied captivity. These were hardened veterans of the Desert War, men who had fought under commanders like Erwin Rommel and had pushed deep into North Africa. They expected revenge. The expected brutality and Nazi indoctrination had prepared them for starvation and humiliation at the hands of Americans. Instead, within hours of surrender, they were handed American field rations, meals that U.S. soldiers themselves often complained about for being repetitive. The prisoners, they were a feast. That was the first crack in the story. They had been told second crack fizzed inside a 5-cent bottle. Imagine being a loyal soldier of the Third Reich. You've been told your entire life that America is weak, corrupt, decadent, a nation of lazy consumers who can't survive without luxury. You expect brutality. If you're captured instead, you're handed a cold bottle of Coca-Cola. It costs 5 cents, same price an American child would pay. And then ice cream in the middle of a World War. That moment, small, sweet, almost absurd, became one of the most powerful psychological weapons of the Second World War. This isn't a story about bullets or bombs, it's about how American abundance quietly shattered Nazi ideology, one scoop and one soda at a time. By 1943, thousands of German soldiers were being shipped across the Atlantic. Prisoners of war. Many had fought in North Africa against Allied forces under commanders like Erwin Rommel. They expected revenge. After all, Nazi propaganda had spent years portraying Americans as savage capitalists and racial degenerates. Regime under Adolf Hitler had taught them that democracy was chaos, that sacrifice and suffering were noble, that deprivation made a nation strong. Food shortages in Germany were framed as heroic endurance. Luxury was weakness. So, when these soldiers were transported to camps in places like Texas, Alabama, and Arizona, they braced for cruelty. Instead, they were processed under the rules of the Geneva Convention. They received beds, medical care, malpractice. Then came the shock. And former German officer later recalled the moment he tasted Coca-Cola for the first time. It was like drinking the future. Coca-Cola wasn't rare in pre-war Germany, but during the war, supply chains collapsed. Sugar was rationed. Imports vanished. But in American camps, Coke was everywhere. In 1943 alone, The United States produced nearly 5 billion bottles of Coca-Cola. 5 billionth drink cost 5 cents, and here's what shattered them: it cost the same for a German POW as it did for an American citizen. Oh, special pricing, no humiliation. Oh, scarcity. Men raised under a totalitarian system obsessed with hierarchy and control. This simple transaction carried a powerful message: industrial democracy works, mass production works, equality, at least at the checkout counter, was real. The bottle wasn't just sugar water, it was proof of economic power. If Coca-Cola was surprising, ice cream was unbelievable. Think about it, it's 1944. The world is meningitis in Europe are being flattened by bombing campaigns in Germany. Civilians survive on 1,200 to 1,500 calories per day. Butter is scarce, meat is rare, sugar is precious. Meanwhile, in American POW camps, prisoners received between 3,300 and 3,600 calories daily. That's more than many American soldiers overseas, and sometimes, after dinner, they were given ice cream, creamy frozen product that requires refrigeration, transportation, dairy supply chains, and industrial freezers. It felt like magic. The United States Navy even deployed floating ice cream barges in the Pacific to supply troops. If America could freeze dessert in tropical heat during a global war, what else could it do? To the prisoners, it was an overwhelming display of logistical power, not flash and not loud, but devastatingly effective energy. Ideology depended on one core belief: suffering makes you superiorship proves your strength. Among civilians endured bombing raids during campaigns conducted by forces that included the Luftwaffe and later retaliatory strikes by Allied bombers. Propaganda claimed deprivation was patriotic, but in America, POW saw something different. They saw grocery stores overflowing. They saw farmers producing more than enough. They saw waste. They saw abundance so vast that even prisoners could eat well. And here's the irony: they were being treated better in enemy captivity than their families were back home. That realization spread quietly through the camps. Contrast was unavoidable. It didn't require lectures, it didn't require re-education seminars, it required a meal trathon. Came Thanksgiving. In 1944, roughly 425,000 German POWs held in American camps received traditional turkey dinners. Turkey, stuffing, potatoes, cranberry sauce, pumpkin pie. Organizing that meal required staggering coordination across dozens of states. Railways, refrigeration, farms, military logistics. And it wasn't done for propaganda photos. It was standard procedure under international law. Imagine being a captured soldier from a nation running on ration cards and watching your captors casually provide a feast. It wasn't cruelty that shook them. It was competence. It was scale. It was effortless generosity born from industrial capacity. Take Camp Aliceville in Alabama. Prisoners worked on farms, earning small wages. They could buy candy. Soap magazones even formed orchestras. They played soaks. They attended classes. They were hardliners, true believers who resisted any softening of their views. But for many young soldiers, the experience created cracks in the ideological armor they'd worn for years. They had been told democracy was chaos, yet here was order. They had been told capitalism was exploitative. Here was abundance. They had been told Americans were inferior, yet here they were fed, housed, and treated within the framework of law. The enemy did not match the caricatural talk number scum civilians. By late war, 1,200 to 1,500 calories daily among POWs. In America, 3,300 to 3,600 calories daily. Thought difference isn't smell, it's transformational. Equal energy equals moral. Morally shapes belief. One, your body is nourished Your mind becomes receptive when you're starving. Ideology hardens. United States didn't just outproduce Germany militarily, it outproduced it agriculturally in 1943. While Europe rationed sugar, America bottled billions of sodas. That scale sent a message louder than any speech years later. Former POWs would describe their time in American camps not with hatred, but with astonishment. Described his first Coke as tasting like the future, and recalled ice cream as a symbol of unimaginable wealth. They didn't all become pro-American overnight, but many left with questions, and questions are dangerous to authoritarian systems. Bez, once you've seen an alternative, you can't unsee it. After 1945, Germany lay in ruin, cities destroyed, infrastructure collapsed, economy shattered. But something interesting happened in the western zones occupied by the United States. Transformation began, what would later be called the Wirtschaftswunder, the economic miracle, rebuilt West Germany into one of the strongest economies in Europe. No, let's be clear, this recovery had many causes: currency reform, the Marshall Plan, industrial expertise, political restructuring. Thousands of former POWs returned home having witnessed something critical: functional mass production, abundance, organized logistics. They had seen what a democratic industrial economy looked like from the inside through propaganda through experience, and that experience mattered. History often focuses on tanks and planners and battles like Normandy and leaders like Dwight D. Eisenhower, but sometimes victory comes from something quieter. Coca-Cola wasn't designed as a weapon. Ice cream wasn't meant to dismantle fascism, yet they did something bombs couldn't. They exposed the Nazi ideology, promised strength through sacrifice. America demonstrated strength through production, through choice, through abundance so overwhelming that even prisoners could taste it. And when a young German soldier held that 5-cent Coke, he wasn't just holding a drink, was holding proof that the system he'd been taught to despise was capable of feeding enemies better than his own regime fed citizens. That's historical irony at its sharpest. Third Reich tried to conquer the world through domination, but its worldview was quietly undermined by desert. This story isn't about sugar. It's about systems. It's about how prosperity can defeat propaganda. It's about how treating prisoners with dignity can become a strategic advantage. When those POWs boarded ships to return to Europe, many carried more than memorials. They carried doubt, and doubt is where transformation begins in the end. Nazi ideology wasn't just crushed by artillery and advancing armies, it was eroded by contrast. Be full plates next to empty ones. Be 5-cent sodas next to ration cards. Be ice cream served in the middle of a global war. Sometimes history turns not on explosions, but on moments so ordinary they seem almost trivial until you realize they changed everything. If you want more stories about the hidden psychological battles of World War II, the ones fought with industry, logistics, and human dignity, subscribe, because history isn't just about who fired the last shot, it's about who built the stronger world.